Look at me. Don't I look happy here? Don't I look full of life? This was taken before I discovered what true despair was. Before I lost all feelings of hope and wonder in this world. This is what happens when you support the Chicago Fire.
Fun fact, I originally named this video The Decade of Hell. Yeah, I thought that's a pretty catchy title. That'll get people's attention. But then I realized that I miscounted. It hasn't been 10 years of complete and utter failure. It's actually been 12 years. Yeah, the Dark Ages began in 2010, and we Fire fans are still experiencing it. How exactly can a team go from missing the playoffs just once in their first 12 years of existence to becoming a team that's made the playoffs just twice in the last 12 years of existence? Well, let's find out.
The Chicago Fire reached the pinnacle in MLS in just its first season, winning MLS Cup after topping heavy favorites LA Galaxy in the conference finals, and even heavier favorites DC United in the final. 5 days later, the Fire would complete the double and win the US Open Cup, with the final being on home soil against arch-rivals Columbus Crew. Admittedly, it's a little weird when your team wins the championship in year one. You just kind of assume that that's going to happen every year. You never actually think it's going to go bad. I imagine Atlanta fans are probably having similar feelings after they won it in just year two. With 2 more MLS Cup appearances, a Supporters' Shield, and 3 more US Open Cup victories over the next couple years, it was a good time to be a Fire fan in the early days of MLS. Even after multiple shortcomings to the Revolution in the playoffs in the 2000s, it always felt like the Fire were on the brink of a championship. And though they never reached dynasty status before their fall from grace, in the 2000s, they did have the second most trophies of any MLS team, only trailing DC United. They also got a soccer-specific stadium in 2006, which, okay, hindsight is 2020, and now we can look back and say that the deal to build the stadium was not a good one, and was way too far away from downtown Chicago. But back in those days, it was just impressive to have your own stadium. They also signed Mexican legend Cuauhtémoc Blanco in 2007, arguably their second biggest signing of all time, as they also signed former Ballon d'Or winner Hristo Stoichkov in 2000. And then later, in 2007, the team was purchased by Andrew Hauptmann of Andal Holdings Inc. It was nice to actually have an owner instead of just be owned by AEG like half the league back then. In 2008, the Fire appointed longtime assistant Dennis Hamlet as head coach after Juan Carlos Osorio left to take the Red Bulls job, and the Fire were good. Like, really good. Goalkeeper John Bush won Goalkeeper of the Year that year and was named to the MLS Best 11, along with defender Bakary Samari and Blanco in the middle. A young, exciting star in the making, Chris Rolfe teamed up with midseason acquisition former U.S. national team legend Brian McBride. After a blazing hot start with 6 wins in their first 9, the Fire finished second place in the East and third overall. In the conference semis, the Fire finally vanquished their demons and knocked off the Revolution after multiple years of disappointment. Honestly, that alone may have been better than the MLS Cup for me. I've got a whole video on this rivalry. Go ahead, check it out. In a thrilling conference final, the Fire would fall short to the Columbus Crew. Even though the Fire lost, it still felt like they were closer than ever to reaching the mountaintop. 2009 brought back most of the same team from 2008, and it was a similar story. Great start to the season, finishing second in the conference to the Crew again. They even managed to beat the Revs again in the conference semis. The difference was that this time the Supporters' Shield winner Columbus Crew were upset in the conference semis. This meant that the Fire would be hosting Real Salt Lake in the conference semis. I was at this game, and I was so confident. I knew that this was finally the year. I knew the Fire were finally going to win it. Except that's not what happened, as the legend of Nick Rimando was officially born with 3 saves in the PK shootout.
True story. I was one of the last people to leave the stadium that night. My girlfriend at the time, she wasn't really into soccer, and she was waiting at the top of the stand. She was probably wondering what I was doing and what was taking so long. I was taking one last look at the field because I knew that this was our best shot to win a cup. I knew that 2010 was going to be a year of transition. And I wondered if the Fire would ever return to this level.
Yeah.
About that.
After the 09 season, Blanco returned to Mexico. Chris Rolfe was trying his luck in Europe, and head coach Dennis Hamlet was fired. Despite making back-to-back Eastern Conference Finals, the fan base was actually split on Hamlet, with some applauding this move from Andrew Hauptman. Some weren't happy with the lack of creativity from his lineups, and after a locker room fight with fan favorite Bakary Samari during halftime of a loss to the Dynamo in 2009, some were completely off the Hamlet train. As a replacement, they brought in Carlos de los Cobos, a former Liga MX player and manager who most recently managed the El Salvador national team before coming to the Fire. Not a bad resume, and even with the big losses in Blanco and Rolfe, maybe the Fire can still be an elite team. But then, just days before the season opener, former goalkeeper of the year John Bush was released. According to reports, De Los Cobos informed him that second-year player Andrew Dykstra would be starting the season opener, and Bush would be the backup. And then, a day later, Bush was let go.
It was truly a move that shocked the league. Because it's not like John Bush had a dramatic drop-off in 2009. He still racked up 10 shutouts. To replace him with an unproven, undrafted, second-year player was unheard of. I mean, you would think in a year with such high turnover and a new head coach, you would at least want a veteran presence in the back. But apparently not.
Andrew Dykstra was okay. He wasn't awful, but he also wasn't goalkeeper of the year level. He was eventually replaced midway through the season by rookie Sean Johnson. The rest of the Fire were not so great. Carlos de los Cobos promised an exciting, high-scoring team. To do that, they brought in Brian McBride's former teammate at Fulham, Collins John. 3 goals in 17 appearances. Okay, not great. And then they also brought in El Salvador national teamer winger Julio Martinez, who just made 3 appearances. Also, not great. One of the reasons for the Fire's downfall was their horrific record with designated players, which started in 2010. Yeah, they may have hit it out of the park with their first DP in Blanco, but in 2010, they brought in Freddie Lundberg from Seattle and Neri Castillo on loan from Shakhtar Donetsk of the Ukrainian Premier League. Both players were busts. They finished 7 points outside the playoff picture, 500 at home, below 500 on the road. Not a chance they're making the playoffs with that record. It's honestly a shame that 2010 had to be the final years for Brian McBride and Fire legend CJ Brown. I wanted to see them go out on a high note, but it is what it is. The Fire got off to a miserable start in 2011, and Carlos de los Cobos didn't even make it out of May that season. With a 1-4-6 record, he was dismissed. Technical director and longtime fan favorite Frank Klopas took over as the interim head coach. It was a move that I personally wasn't a fan of. As TD, I did put a lot of blame on him for the disastrous 2010 season, even if he wasn't solely to blame for letting go of John Bush and for some of the misses with the signings. By the middle of August, the Fire still only had 2 wins, and chances of making the playoffs were pretty much already over. They had a couple other signings that didn't really make a huge impact, although no DPs this time. One signing that did make an impact was Dominic Oduro, a guy who was freaky fast but also had a reputation for not exactly having the best finishing touch. That is until he arrived in Chicago, where he put in 12 goals in 2011. Great, so it looks like the Fire finally have that consistent goal scorer up top, which lacked all of last season. And in the US Open Cup, they made a run all the way to the final. No, they didn't win, as Seattle took home their 3rd straight Open Cup title, but Even still, it had been 5 years since the Fire made a final in anything, so this was kind of nice.
And they also went 7-1-2 in their last 10 games and only missed the playoffs by 3 points. So, hey, maybe things aren't so bad after all. Maybe Klopas is the chosen one, and maybe the Fire are really back. It certainly appeared that way in 2012. While the team did start off a little inconsistent in the beginning, things started to really heat up in the summertime. And the Fire became one of the hardest teams to beat at home, posting an impressive 11-3-3 record at Toyota Park.
For all the success that Dennis Hamlet had in his 2 years in charge, to be fair, his teams did kind of start to wilt in the summertime. Like they would start hot, but then finish the year as a 500 team. So it was nice having it be the other way around for a change. Chris Rolfe came back in April and became the team's leading goal scorer as Dominic Aduro fell out of form. Rookie Austin Berry picked up Rookie of the Year honors, and Sean Johnson, still only 23, had his best season to date, even picking up a Player of the Week honor in Week 28. The Fire also picked up German defender Arne Friedrich from VfL Wolfsburg, and he acted as an anchor on the back line. Their DPs, not so hot. Federico Pupo, 11 appearances and 1 start, no goals. General rule of thumb, unless your DP is like a teenager, your DP should be starting more than 1 game a year. Alvaro Fernandez came over from the Sounders midseason, the second Sounder to be a Fire DP. 13 starts, 2 goals, and 1 assist. And finally, Sergio McDonald, the striker. 12 games started, 4 goals, 4 assists. Honestly, not horrific numbers, but probably doesn't warrant that DP status either. The Fire managed to make the playoffs as the 4 seed in the East and hosted the Houston Dynamo in the knockout round. They didn't win. Despite the Fire's great home record and historically great home playoff record, the Dynamo walked away with a 2-1 win.
But even with the loss, the Fire still made the playoffs, so clearly this dozen years of hell isn't that hellish, right? I mean, I probably could have come up with a better title now, right? And if you look at other teams from other pro sports in this country, you got the Seattle Mariners. They haven't made the MLB playoffs in 20 years. The Sacramento Kings, they haven't made the NBA playoffs in like 16 years. So, yeah, when you look at it like that, maybe being a Fire fan isn't so bad after all. Except it is that bad. Because now we got our hopes up. We're feeling good. They're not going to let us down again, right? And with a year like 2012, we finally got some momentum going. And we're finally going to return to being a consistent playoff team.
In the 2013 season, the Fire fell back down to earth and missed the playoffs due to goal differential. They could have made it with a draw on the last day of the regular season, but fell 5-2 to the Red Bulls. But hey, at least mid-season acquisition Mike McGee won the MVP award. I'm sorry. Is that supposed to make me feel any better? I mean, Magic Mike, he was great. Literally the only bright spot about this team. But I never liked giving that award to a player of a team that didn't make the playoffs. It's called the most valuable player. And you know what would have happened if the Fire did not have Mike McGee? Probably the same thing. They still would have missed the playoffs. So, what happened? Well, no one scored, except for Mike McGee. Second leading goal scorer was a 3-way tie with Patrick Nyako, Dilly Duca, and Chris Rolfe, all with just 4 goals. So then, someone asks, maybe a DP striker would have solved this mess? But the problem is that those DP slots were already taken from 2012. Sergio McDonald was still on the roster and in 13 games couldn't find the back of the net. That's a problem. During the season, Chicago did sign Arvalo Rios on loan, a guy that Frank Klopas praised as being world-class and a true game-changer. He only made 9 total appearances. And then, Juan Luis Anangano. 2 goals in 13 appearances. Chicago's inability to sign a goal scorer is really starting to get on my nerves now. Also, it should be mentioned that Arne Friedrich, who was so crucial to the Fire's success in 2012, didn't appear in any matches in 2013 due to reoccurring injuries, and he announced his retirement halfway through the season. At the end of the year, Frank Klopas stepped down, and I think this is important to note. he was not fired. During this decade of hell, Klopas was easily the most successful coach, making the playoffs in 2012 and being pretty damn close in 2011 and 2013. Had he stayed on, and if they were able to actually hit on some of their DPs, then perhaps the Fire could have built a solid foundation. Instead, they got another Frank. A Frank that really didn't work out. Oh boy, here we go. Frank Yallop. Well, on the one hand, he was a two-time MLS Cup winning head coach with the San Jose Earthquakes back in 2001 and 2003. And since then, the best way to describe his coaching record is inconsistent. He was head coach for the Canadian national team at a time, which didn't go so well, and also had a stint with the Galaxy, which also didn't go so well. He returned to the Earthquakes in 2008, and while he did manage to make the playoffs twice in a 5.5-year run, including winning a Supporter Shield in 2012, ultimately he stepped down midway through 2013. Big changes came for the Fire, and no, I'm not just talking about the Quaker Oats oatmeal can-looking jersey they wore. Yallop brought in Fire legend C.J. Brown along with Clint Mathis for the coaching staff and hired former Columbus Crew technical director Brian Bliss. The team also decided to make an effort to go younger and shut off a lot of veterans, which opened up a lot of cap space.
Now, extra money is nice, but it's really only worth it if you spend it right. You want to guess if the Fire did that?
Now, okay, Razvan Kochis, he was decent. He was signed in July and became a regular starter for multiple seasons. But you know what would have been awesome? Had the Fire signed Jermaine Jones. Actually, in August of 2014, it was reported that it was a done deal. And I was hyped. I mean, bringing in a World Cup hero, what a perfect way to get fans interested in the Chicago Fire again. But in case you didn't know this, MLS is a wonky league. And when Jermaine Jones agreed to sign with MLS, his fate on where he would land would come down to a coin toss. Yeah, a freaking coin toss, which wasn't even televised, by the way. Anyways, yeah, the Fire lost that coin toss to New England of all teams, who made it all the way to MLS Cup that season. The Fire finished 15th out of 19 total teams and tied for the fewest wins on the season with just 6. 6 wins, 10 losses, and an MLS record 18 draws. This was one of the most infuriating seasons as a Fire fan because of all the draws. Usually, they just couldn't hold on to a lead, and oftentimes, it felt like they were just trying to hold on for dear life instead of going for the dagger and going for the win. It just felt like they were always playing for the draw. The biggest bright spot in an otherwise miserable season, though, was rookie homegrown Harry Shipp. Shipp quickly became a fan favorite, and broadcaster Dan Kelly's signature phrase of "Holy Shipp" was perfect.
And as Fire fans, we were able to say, hey, at least we got Harry Shipp. I mean, with him and Nyako and Lorenowitz, the middle's looking all right. Sure, we got to upgrade above that and below that, but pieces are there, potential is there, and maybe if they sign the right combination of DPs, maybe the Fire can finally turn it around.
Well, the Fire signed 3 more DPs for 2015, but really only one of them was worth it. Kennedy Igboanike. He was hyped up by Yallop because apparently Frank Yallop had been trying to sign him for years. Well, was it worth the wait, Frank? The Fire also signed, Sean Maloney, formerly of Aston Villa, Celtic, and Wigan Athletic. I remember seeing the highlight package the Fire put together and thinking, wow, this guy looks legit, but did the Fire really need him? I mean, come on, we have Harry Shipp. He was supposed to take the next step. In 2014, Harry Shipp kind of bounced around between playing on the wing and playing in the middle, and even played up top as a striker at times. But he's gone on record by saying that in the middle is where he's the most comfortable. So this Sean Maloney signing was kind of a bummer for him, because a lot of people were expecting Shipp to solidify his spot in the middle, and this signing kind of bumped him out of the way. And Maloney flopped. He left after just 14 games, citing personal reasons. Yeah, thanks for trying, dude. Now, the one DP signing that did hit, and it really hit, was David Accam. Akam was one of the fastest players in MLS and became a menace for the Fire on the wings. I ain't a banker, but I believe in giving credit where credit is due, and Chicago, you nailed this one. Because of Maloney leaving, this opened up another DP slot, which the Fire filled with Brazilian Gilberto, formerly of Toronto FC. Okay, hey, can we stop signing DPs from other MLS teams? But hey, you know what would have been awesome? Had the Fire signed Didier Drogba. There were reports that Chicago were the leading candidates to land the Chelsea legend. But just like the Jermaine Jones saga from last year, seemingly at the last minute, Drogba was snatched away by another team. This time, it was the Montreal Impact. God, can we just score one big-time DP, please? The Fire were even worse than the previous year. The million draws from 2014 turned into losses in 2015. And on September 20th of the 2015 season, Yallop was officially sacked when the Fire had a record of 7, 16, and 6. Technical director Brian Bliss was appointed as interim head coach, and the Fire would officially finish the season as the Wooden Spoon recipients with a dismal record of 8 wins, 20 losses, and 6 draws. 0 wins on the road. Truly a new low for the Fire. With Yallop's departure came more big moves for the Fire, as they appointed longtime MLS executive Nelson Rodriguez as the new general manager. Job number 1, find a new head coach. Now, it's one thing to win an MLS Cup more than a decade ago, but how about winning the U20 World Cup? And not with like Brazil or Spain, but rather with Serbia. Yeah, that really happened.
Now, unlike the last 2 hires, I was actually a big fan of this move. Because if anyone can connect with the younger players, well, who better than the U20 coach? Who better than Veljko Paunovic? The nicest thing I could say about Veljko Paunovic was that throughout his tenure with the Fire, whether you loved the guy or hated the guy, the one thing you could not deny was his passion. I'm not saying that the other Fire coaches during this torturous era didn't want to win. Of course they did. But with Paunovic, man, you could just hear it in his interviews. You could just hear how much this job meant to him. And for that reason, I found that myself was rooting not just for the Fire, but also for Pauno. I really wanted to see him succeed.
So yet again, there was another exodus of veteran players. Now Lorenowitz was gone, McGee was gone, and Yako was gone. And unfortunately, so was my guy, Harry Shipp, as he was traded to the Montreal Impact for some GAM and TAM. So right away, it was pretty apparent that we were looking at a rebuild in year 1 for Pauno. Okay, fine. Rome wasn't built in one day. And if you can get it right, I can handle another year or 2 of crap. I was starting to get my hopes up, but then this Chicago Fire All Access video came out of the Super Draft in 2016, and oh boy, Nelson Rodriguez gives us the soundbite of the century.
We just shook up the soccer world, boys.
You go shut up now is what you're gonna do.
Okay, yeah, so the Fire had the number 1 overall pick. They drafted Jack Harrison, and considering how well he performed in MLS and where he is now, and leads in the EPL, he was the best player in this draft without a question. But the problem is that Harrison never actually played for the Fire, as Chicago elected to wheel and deal on draft night. They traded away Harrison for the 4th pick and some cash, which they used that pick for left back Brandon Vincent. They also made a lot of other moves in the draft to move up spots. They were really busy on this day. Generally, my opinion on the draft is that it's kind of a crapshoot, so I don't think it's usually necessary to trade up spots for money or trade down spots. And to give away Jack Harrison to NYCFC, let's face it, that was a mistake. With all that being said, Brandon Vincent did have a great rookie season. He was actually named to the MLS All-Star team in 2016, and some were saying he had a real shot at being the future left back for the U.S. men's national team. So at the time, it did seem like the trade paid off. But then, Brandon Vincent retired after 2018, at the age of 24. And it wasn't even because of reoccurring injuries or a dip in form, he was just done. I mean, damn, like, that's his decision. I can't really be mad at him, but man, what a bummer. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Let's look at 2016. Last place again, 7 wins, 17 losses, and 10 draws. The first team in MLS history to go back-to-back wooden spoons. Thank God FC Cincinnati exists now, so Chicago no longer holds the distinction of being the only team to go back-to-back. Now, the Fire weren't bad at home, actually posting a winning record, but on the road, they were catastrophically bad. 14 losses. Jesus Christ. 1 win on the road in the last 2 seasons. That's not exactly ideal. The Fire again brought in a bunch of strikers who didn't really pan out. I mean, Michael DeLeo was decent. He bagged in 7 goals, but Luis Soloniak didn't really put up the numbers the Fire really needed, and David Urshakian, I mean, he was a meme. I don't know what to say. He really didn't work out. But the Fire did have a few gems in their roster. Matt Polster was named one of the league's best 24 players under the age of 24, and the duo of Johan Kappelhoff and João Maia, they weren't awful in the back. The team overall was bad. Like, they were really bad, but it was a rebuilding year. I kinda expected this, so I felt like there was a little bit of momentum heading into 2017. December 2016, the Fire signed Nemanja Nikolic on a DP deal. Yeah, I saw the highlight packages for Kennedy Igboanike, Juan Luis Anangano, Collins John. So, yeah, with so many misses, I needed to see it on the field before I believed it. But then it was announced that Juninho of Tijuana, and formerly of the LA Galaxy, was being loaned to the Fire. Holy crap, okay, now that's pretty big. And then in January, the Fire signed Dax McCarty, who, at the time, even though he was playing with the Red Bulls, he was my favorite player in the league. Oh my God, like, I couldn't believe it. The Fire were making moves. Like, good ones. I could hardly believe it. Okay, sure, Sean Johnson was gone, but they could get around that, right? And then, after an okay start to the season, the Fire dropped a nuclear bomb in the signing of Bastian Schweinsteiger. Yeah, you want to talk about leadership? How about bringing in a guy who knows how to win? Multiple Bundesliga titles, a World Cup title. He's coming to Chicago. What is going on?
I couldn't believe it. I mean, this was a signing that rivaled Blanco levels of excitement. And the Fire got really, really good, really, really fast. And let me tell you, 2017 was one hell of a ride.
I'm wondering, Bastian, you just talked about Chicago developing a good Fire club. Do you expect now that you're here, Bastian, that World Cup goal for Chicago Fire is a realistic expectation?
What?
Yeah, welcome to America, Bastian. This is why soccer is the 5th most popular sport in this country. Okay, yeah, kind of a weird start, but once he started playing, things got good. In the early summertime, the Fire had a 11-game run where they didn't lose. And it wasn't like they were holding on to draws. No, they were winning, and winning by a lot. They started up this run by thrashing the defending MLS Cup champs Seattle Sounders 4-1 on national TV, and they ended the run with back-to-back 4-0 victories at home. Seeing the Fire occupy the top spot in the power rankings was honestly one of the happiest moments I'd ever have as a Fire fan. It was incredible. But it didn't last. As the summer months rolled on, injuries started to pile up, and the Fire kinda got exposed for having very little depth to fill in when needed. For instance, they only had 3 center backs on the roster, and when João Maia got hurt, the Fire's backline was torn to shreds. After that 11-game run where the Fire didn't lose, they then had a run of 7 games where they lost 6. But despite that late summer swoon, the Fire still finished with the third best record in the Eastern Conference, which also happened to be the third best record in the entire league. Nikolic was the first DP to really be worth it. He banged in a Fire record 24 goals, good enough to win the Golden Boot. The Fire also debuted Georgi Mihailovic, who looked like a potential star in the making.
Also, the team recorded its second highest average attendance ever, second only to its inaugural season in 1998. Yeah, more people were coming to watch this team than the Blanco years.
The low point of the season was, unfortunately, the knockout round of the playoffs. Only 11,000 plus tickets were sold, and I'm not even convinced that many fans showed up. It was so bad that even Stu Holden said how disappointed he was in the Fire supporters. But the Fire and its fans only found out they would be hosting this game just a few days prior, and it was on a Wednesday night in Bridgeview, Illinois. It is literally impossible to get to the game on time if you are working in downtown Chicago. That's kind of a reason why this stadium situation was so bad. If this game was on a weekend, no doubt it would have sold out, or at least put up similar numbers to the rest of the season. But maybe it was a good thing that not that many fans showed up, because it was maybe the worst performance of the year for the Fire. They were absolutely hammered by the Red Bulls 4-0. It was never even competitive. And to make matters worse, Wonder Kid Georgi Mihailovic suffered an ACL tear.
It feels like most Fire fans were on the same page heading into 2018. We all kind of thought, okay, now we got some momentum. Like 2012, okay, that was fool's gold, but now this team is ready to blossom. They're ready to thrive. Like, they are ready to take the next step because they're legit. And finally, after all these years, finally, the Fire have the right head coach in Veljko Paunovic.
The Fire weren't quite as busy in the 2018 offseason as they were in 2017, but I mean, you can't have a 2017 offseason and do that every year. The problem was that they really didn't get any better at any of the positions. Okay, sure, they got Alexander Katai on loan, who had his moments of brilliance throughout the season. Raheem Edwards was also good, but neither of them provided the spark that David Accam did, and because of a rift between Pano and Accam was shipped off to Philly for 2018. The Fire still struggled badly with depth issues, and with João Maira leaving the Fire, that left a big hole in the middle where new homegrown Grant Lillard and other signings just couldn't fill. It got so bad that Paunovic moved Bastian Schweinsteiger to play center back, which, okay, on the one hand, because of just how good he is, even though this isn't his natural position, he was by far the best on the team in this role. But on the other hand, it's freaking Bastian Schweinsteiger. You paid all this money to stick him in a position he's not supposed to play? And there was also Richard Sanchez. Sanchez made 2 starts in 2017 and looked all right. In fact, some wanted him over Lampson in the playoffs. After Lampson was traded to Minnesota, Sanchez took over.
Okay, I'll come clean. I was a big Richard Sanchez believer. I mean, I've seen him make these fantastic athletic saves. I thought, okay, we're set in the goalkeeping position because I really believe we got a potential top 5 or at least top 10 goalkeeper in this league.
But that's not what happened. I am dead serious when I say this. I have never seen a keeper make so many errors in my life. It was bizarre. He would make a difficult, show-stopping save and then drop a floated and cross that would get poked in the very next play. I felt so bad. I mean, I played keeper in high school, and I'm not going to pretend like I know the pressures of playing professionally, but I do understand that feeling of being in a funk. And unfortunately, that funk lasted all season long. A consistent theme throughout this video is the failures of the front office to find the right pieces. I will say it's not for lack of effort. We know the Fire got royally screwed over in the Jermaine Jones sweepstakes. We know they got extremely close to landing Didier Drogba. 2018, there was more bad luck, as the Fire missed out on both Fernando Torres, a guy who Paunovic was actually a teammate of once upon a time, And they also missed out on Iker Casillas, who would have instantly solved this goalkeeping dilemma. 8, 18, and 8. A far cry from last year's marvelous third-place finish. We can't blame all of 2018 on the front office. Veljko definitely did his part as well. Constant tinkering with different formations and different lineups meant the Fire could never find any consistency. But what was even worse than the record on the field was the turmoil off the field. I don't know the exact situation, I wasn't there. But apparently, members of Sector Latino had used a smoke bomb and had been involved in multiple incidents involving physical violence, according to ProSoccerUSA.com. But I've also seen sources that say it was only one member of the supporters group Sector Latino that had gotten into a fight. But regardless, as a result, the entire supporters group was banned, not for a match, but indefinitely. They even went so far as to rope off their sections, as they were no longer recognized as a supporters group. Section 8, the other main supporters group for the Fire, showed their support and solidarity for Sector Latino and protested the move. And not coincidentally, right after this ban is when the Fire played their worst soccer of the year. An 8-game losing streak in the heart of summer essentially ended their playoff hopes right then and there. Imagine a professional soccer match with no supporter section. And I'm not talking about 2020 pandemic here, I'm talking about 2018. Even if you don't think you pay attention to the drums and the chants, you still notice that something is missing. Something is off. And at these Fire games after the ban, the atmosphere was that of a golf tournament. And not like day 4 of a major, but rather some tune-up tournament with no big names involved. It was embarrassing. It was heartbreaking. And it's probably the lowest moment of the history of the Chicago Fire. Even worse, I'd say, than the 2 wooden spoons. Because at least there were supporters back then that were allowed to cheer, even when they did finish dead last. Both Nelson Rodriguez and Veljko Paunovic were given another year. I mean, even if 2018 was a train wreck, I still had hope. I was still holding on to the memories of 2017, and I still thought, we need to give him another year. I mean, he might still be the right guy. In 2019, the offseason signings were better. CJ Sapong, a guy who was normally very streaky, was in really good form this season, scoring 13 goals. Przemysław Frankowski also provided a nice burst of speed that the Fire lacked since letting go of Akam. And Nicolas Gaitan was another really solid piece in the middle. But in the end, it didn't really pan out. The Fire finished the year with 10 wins, 12 losses, and 12 draws. 42 points, and yet again missing out on the playoffs. Matt Doyle wrote that this was a 55-point team, and looking at the roster, maybe I wouldn't have gone that high, but I do think they should have at least made the playoffs.
In 2018, there was off-the-field drama, and everyone underperformed, and Chicago Fire were a bad team. But I struggle to call the 2019 Fire a bad team. I mean, they competed hard. They just came up short at crucial times in the season. And with Paunovic doing more tinkering, that meant, again, they just couldn't build any consistency with their lineups.
The attendance also took a nosedive in 2019. It went from 17,000 plus in 2017 to 14,500 in 2018 to just under 12,000 in 2019. And considering you still have Bastian Schweinsteiger on the roster, yeah, that's not great. Early in 2019, there were rumors that the Fire would rebrand, which made a lot of people mad. I mean, yeah, the team might suck, but the Fire is still one of the strongest brands in all of MLS. Of course, we now know there was no name change, just a cosmetic change going from red to blue and Florian Cross to dumbass crown. But before we knew what we were getting, there was definitely some uneasiness because we didn't want to lose the team we had a connection with. But there was also other big news that happened. Andrew Hauptmann was selling the team. This was a move that was celebrated by the fan base, as the hashtag #HauptmannOut had been seen at the stadium and online on Twitter, and people were sick of him and Nelson Rodriguez.
And I'm guilty of this too. I mean, I was really excited about the news of a new owner for the Chicago Fire. But If I may defend Andrew Hopman for a second here, and trust me, you wouldn't have caught me dead doing this 2 or 3 years ago, but if I may, I saw a lot of people on Chicago Fire message boards and other places calling him Dollar Menu Hopman, and I get it. I mean, the Fire did sign a lot of players who you had to look up on Wikipedia who they were, and the Fire certainly whiffed on a lot of their signings. But it's not that he didn't care. And it's not that he didn't spend either. I mean, you could look at the 2017 season. The Fire had the 3rd highest payroll in the entire league. And you could look at all of the huge potential signings that the Fire thought that they were going to get, but then at the last second just slipped through the fingertips. If you think about it, it's probably really hard to convince players to come play here. Because yeah, it's Chicago, but it's not really Chicago. It's Bridgeview. And the team's been so bad for so long now. That's probably a tough task for anyone. Andrew Hopman was passionate. I know he didn't show it in the same way that Veljko Paunovic did, but I promise you, years of bad results, it did weigh heavy on his mind. And you can look at other owners, even other owners in this league, where you could tell that this is just another paycheck for them. You could probably figure out who those people are.
Along with the move to Soldier Field came a new look, a new owner, and a new head coach, as Veljko Paunovic was sacked after 4 seasons. Hate this stupid-ass crown. It's so fucking lame. And blue jerseys? Ugh, God. Your name is the Chicago Fire, not the Chicago Water. New owner Joe Mansueto hired George Heitz as the new sporting director, and former U.S. Soccer Youth National coach Rafael Wicky as the new head coach. The hirings had a very European feel, as both Heitz and Wicky worked together at FC Basel in Switzerland. Okay, so they both know how they operate. This should be somewhat of a smooth transition. Yet again, there was another massive overhaul of talent. The era of Schweinsteiger, McCarty, and Nikolic was officially over. And the last remaining DP, Nicolas Gaitan, was also not re-signed, and neither was Alexander Katai. A new trio of DPs were signed: Ignacio Aliceta, Gaston Jimenez, and Robert Beric.
The rest of the lineup was a lot of new guys, and even though the 2020 season was turned upside down with the pandemic and the MLS is Back tournament, the team pretty much performed exactly up to my expectations, if not slightly better.
The biggest issue for this team was their inconsistencies. Take, for example, the MLS is Back tournament. How you manage to take down MLS powerhouse Seattle Sounders, and then in the same tournament, lose to a team in Vancouver who didn't even bring any strikers down to Florida with them, is beyond me. Robert Beric was the bright spot for the Fire, pumping in 12 goals in 22 appearances. The Fire actually had a chance to make the expanded playoff field on the last day of the regular season, but choked it away with a blunder near the end of the game. Yeah, that sounds about right. I had zero expectations for 2020, and honestly, heading into 2021, I was cautiously optimistic. I figured another year with the head coach, everyone will be more accustomed to the system. Yeah, the Fire have a chance to make some noise as long as Robert Beric stays hot. Now, what I didn't love was the offseason. The Fire declined CJ Sapong's option for 2021, traded young and up-and-comer Georgi Mihailovic to Montreal. How's he been since going up north? And shipped off fan favorite Przemysław Frankowski to RC Lens of France. And as for signings, well, forward Stanislaw Ivanov and Shinozo Ofor were signed to provide a little backup reassurance for Beric. The Fire also signed highly regarded Colombian forward Jean Duran. However, because of transfer regulations, that meant the 17-year-old couldn't officially join the team until 2022. And other than that, not really anyone else. Okay, but more is coming eventually, right? Like, Coach Wicky, please, tell me you got guys that are working on some targets, right? This was an actual quote from Rafael Wicky before the season. Of course, the club is always looking for players, is always scouting players. But right now, we're not talking about immediate new signings. You just never know in the game, but right now, I'm very happy with this roster.
So let me get this straight. You had a young, incomplete roster for 2020 that didn't make the playoffs. And you didn't think you needed any reinforcements? You thought that this current roster was good enough for 2021? Really? You're very happy with this roster that couldn't make an expanded playoff field in 2020?
Come on, man. So yeah, the Fire sucked again, especially really early on in the season. They lost 7 of their first 9 games. Barrich wasn't scoring, the other DPs weren't doing anything either. It was basically a train wreck. Oh, and about moving to Soldier Field, yeah, the attendance, that didn't improve anything. I gave them a pass in 2020 because it was such a wonky season, but the overall average attendance was down yet again in 2021, and when you play in a football stadium, yeah, under 11,000 just isn't a good look. And yeah, this isn't all on Wicky, he wasn't given enough, but he should have at least said that instead of saying he was very happy with the roster. I know, I brought up that quote multiple times now, but well, I just can't believe he would say something like that. Wicky was eventually let go in September and was replaced by interim head coach Frank Klopas. Okay, we're going back to Klopas. All right, I guess. Not a lot of bright spots from this season, but if anything, you could say that goalkeeper Bobby Shuttleworth was pretty good. He single-handedly kept the Fire in a lot of games. But unfortunately for him, he was just a victim of circumstance. You see, there was kind of this wonder kid sitting on the bench. His name was Gabriel Slanina, aka Gaga Slanina. He was clearly the future of the Fire goalkeeping position. So while Shuttleworth didn't necessarily do anything to lose his starting spot, it was also never going to last. Wicky out, but Heights still in. And if he doesn't do any better this season, he might also be out soon too. I gotta say, I absolutely love the hiring of Ezra Hendrickson. I know both Rafael Wicky and Veljko Paunovic briefly played in MLS, but they weren't really MLS guys. They were European guys. Ezra Hendrickson, meanwhile, he played over a decade in MLS, winning multiple cups as a player for multiple different teams. And then the next decade, he served as assistant coaches for the Seattle Sounders, the LA Galaxy, and Columbus Crew. Ezra Hendrickson has put over 20 years into this league. Now he is an MLS guy. Oh yeah, they also rebranded. Again. Hey, it's better than the crown. I'll give them that much. But the original badge is still the best for me. Plus, they're still wearing blue until 2024. That is ridiculous. So once again, with a new head coach came a bunch of moves in the offseason. Barrich gone, Calvo gone, Kapelhoff gone, Madron gone, Stojanovic gone, Alaseda gone. Honestly, I wasn't too heartbroken about losing any of these players. I mean, yeah, I did have sort of a soft spot for Kapelhoff. He was with the Fire for a long time and had to deal with a lot of bad teams in front of him. But other than that, whatever. I'm used to rebuilds. Let's see what we get this time. Oh, what's this? A Bundesliga defender, Rafael Chihos? Okay, I like that. Philadelphia Union all-time leading goal scorer, Kasper Shabilko? Okay, sweet. I like that too. Xherdan Shaqiri. Whoa, okay. What is going on now? This actually isn't bad. This is pretty damn good now. Oh, and a 21-year-old Mexican winger, Jairo Torres. Okay, so he's coming a little later in the season. That's fine. I can wait. Heading into 2022, things were starting to look up. It kind of started to feel like the 2017 season with all these huge moves before the season. I would say the Fire massively upgraded from the last 2 seasons. However, one of the hardest parts of being a Fire fan is this sense of fool's gold. There's been lots of times I've been optimistic heading into the season, only for the Fire to crash and burn. No pun intended. You know, I think Bane from The Dark Knight Rises put it best when he said,
"There can be no true despair without hope."
There could be no true despair without hope. We keep hoping that it'll change. Maybe this new coach will be the answer. Maybe this new technical director will be the answer. Maybe this new owner will be the answer. Someone has to succeed. Eventually. Right?
At the time of recording this, by a points per game basis, the Fire are right where we are used to seeing them. At the bottom. However, I'm not all doom and gloom. I mean, yeah, I wish the Fire were performing better at this point, but I do see potential. No. Strike that last word. I don't even want to say it out loud. I don't want to jinx it.
In May, Chris Mueller, formerly of Orlando City, came to the Fire after a lackluster stint with Hibernians, and right away, he's been making an impact. I think the Fire need to stick with Ezra Hendrickson. They've been pretty unlucky this year with injuries, and I am not saying this would be a playoff team if everyone was healthy, but I do guarantee they wouldn't be in last place right now if that was the case. It's obvious. When he's on the field, Shaqiri is on a whole nother level than everyone else. But given how much time he's missed and the lack of statistical output so far, if we're being completely honest with ourselves, so far, Shaqiri has not been worth the money. And I hate to admit it, but Shabilko has also been a disappointment. At first, I just chalked it up to lack of service, lack of support from the team, but the numbers don't lie. He hasn't been good enough.
It just feels as though the rest of the league has passed the Fire, and the Fire are still trying to catch up. I mean, thank God for MLS Next Pro. Finally, Chicago has a 2-team to field. I don't understand why there was never a Chicago Fire 2 in USL Championship. Sure, they were affiliated with Tulsa and then Indy and Forward Madison, but that's not the same. Yeah, I had my opinions of MLS 2 teams in USL, but when almost everyone else has them, and you don't, then you're kind of missing out. The Fire have just continued over and over again to shoot themselves in the foot by whiffing on major signings, letting go of young talent too early, and never finding the right head coach.
July 9th, 2022, the perfect representation of the Chicago Fire over the last 12 years. A 2-0 lead gave us hope. But as quickly as that hope came, it all fell apart. Our star player asked to be subbed off, while the other team's star came in and completed the comeback. And yet another heartbreak.
Maybe I'm an idiot, but I'm not gonna stop believing that someday in my lifetime, the Fire will figure it out. That someday in my lifetime, playoffs will be the bare minimum. And sometime in my lifetime, the Fire will be champions again. And if that doesn't happen before I die, well, then I hope the Chicago Fire can come to my funeral and lower my casket so they can let me down one more time. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe for more MLS content. We're tied against Influence.